The story begins by introducing us to Millie, a beautiful young woman driving her beat-up car towards the wealthy part of town. At every corner, a house bigger and more beautiful than the last welcomes her, and after driving for almost an hour, she arrives at the Winchester mansion. The house couldn't be more spectacular. The snow covers everything, and it looks like one of those postcards you send to your friends at Christmas. There she is, greeted by Nina, the owner and lady of the house. She behaves very kindly, asks her to come in quickly. It is very cold, but she has prepared snacks and tea for their meeting. Upon entering, Millie realizes that Nina wasn't lying. Her hostess has prepared a table full of everything she could possibly want, something extremely elaborate for what should only be a job interview. Despite that, Nina gets straight to the point, holds Millie's resume in her hand, and immediately realizes that she is overqualified for the job. She even has a university degree. That's why she's not entirely sure this is the place for her. She could be applying for a job at a company, not to be the maid she's looking for. However, Millie gives Nina the answers she wants to hear, admits that she needs the job, and is confident that she will be the best candidate of all. Having sorted out the details, Nina points out a painting on the wall. There she can see her husband, Andrew, a successful and charismatic software engineer, a fabulous father to their little girl, Cece, who will be the next ballet superstar. Nina is very proud of her family, so she wants someone reliable and available 24 hours a day, which is why Millie will have to move into the house, and she will have Saturdays free for her personal matters. With the details sorted out, Nina gives him a tour of the house, which is immense, has 2 kitchens, a private cinema, and a conference room, all meticulously designed by Andrew. And Nina mentions that sometimes it feels like a prison. At the mention of prison, Nina's eyes widen slightly, but Millie ignores this. They then go upstairs, where Nina reveals that she's pregnant, which explains her urgent need for a maid, but she begs him not to tell Andrew. She plans to tell him soon, but hasn't found the right words yet. They've been trying for children for a long time, and the prospect has them both excited. One of the few places he's semi-off limits to is Cece's room. He can only enter if the little girl gives him permission, otherwise it's a real ordeal trying to cheer her up. She likes to keep her things tidy, so it's the only place in the house he won't have to clean. From outside, Millie can see a toy house identical to the real one. Among the figures, there is a scene with dolls of the family peacefully having dinner, but she can't help feeling uncomfortable in that place. At the end of the tour is what will be her room. It's in the attic, right at the end of a long staircase. It has a simple decoration, but it's very private and soundproof, so she can play her music or shout and nobody will be able to hear her. The final part, Nina says in a certain tone that makes Millie a little nervous. However, the pay and the opportunity for free room and board sound too good to refuse, so she accepts all the conditions, and Nina promises to call her after considering the other candidates, gives her $20 for her time, and they say goodbye. A few minutes later, Millie leaves the property hoping Nina will call her, but as she drives away, she reveals that everything on her resume is fake. She has never set foot in a university, she doesn't even need glasses, she just wanted to look professional. Actually, he just got out of prison, lives in his car, and uses gas station bathrooms to clean himself. The $20 that Nina gave him for gas, he used for the first decent meal of the week. Because of his record, he has not been able to get a job and is losing hope. The young woman is a complete mess. She's trying everything to survive. That night she sleeps in a parking lot, but the next morning the police approach her with the intention of arresting her. Millie makes up a story that she was driving to her mother's house but got sleepy and didn't want to drive like that. At that moment, she receives a call from Nina, who tells her she has the job, but she needs to start immediately. Excited, Millie returns to the house, but this time the intercom doesn't work. On the other side of the fence is Enzo, who takes care of all the maintenance of the house, and he opens the gate for her. However, Enzo doesn't utter a single word. Instead, he stares at her for a few awkward seconds. Despite this strange moment, Millie focuses on the opportunity and continues on her way. Upon entering the house, the image of the perfect mansion is gone. The place is a complete disaster. It looks as if a hurricane has swept everything away. There are clothes, dishes, and food scattered all over the house. It would take an entire team hours to put the place in order. Nina appears 2 seconds later, forgets all manners, and tells her to start cleaning immediately. She'll be in her office writing a very important speech and doesn't want to be disturbed. They'll talk about her other responsibilities later. By nightfall, Millie had made good progress with the cleaning. The house had regained some of its former beauty just before Andrew and Cece arrived. At first, they seemed nervous about Millie's presence. It turned out they had no idea about the interviews, much less that she would be living there. However, when Nina mentions that Millie will be staying in the attic room, Andrew looks at her attentively and gives a small smile. The young woman realizes it's an awkward moment, so she goes up to her room. Although she's hungry, she skips dinner, but Nina appears with a plate shortly after. Seeing her touching the window, he tells her that they have never been able to open it. Besides, his door can only be opened from the outside, but he will get her a key later. To change the subject, Nina hands her the new iPhone, loaded with her credit card so she can buy food, gas, and anything else she needs. It also requires that you keep it charged at all times. This is one of the mandatory requirements. With a hug, Nina eases the tension and Millie feels a little more comfortable, even though she is still in a room she doesn't control at all. The next morning, the weeks he's spent sleeping in his car take their toll. He ends up oversleeping, and when he tries to open the door, it's locked from the outside, and he can hear shouts coming from the kitchen. Once he manages to force the latch, he runs downstairs and finds Nina wrecking the place. His notes for the speech have disappeared, and she's yelling in everyone's face. Nina keeps talking to herself, forcefully opens the drawers, and drops everything on the floor, while making a scene worthy of someone insane. After smashing some dishes, Andrew appears to calm her down, takes her in his arms, and offers her a hot bath to soothe her. Then they can write her speech together for that night. At that moment, Nina looks at Millie and tells her without hesitation that she ruined her whole day, and stares at her without blinking until the young woman apologizes. Once Nina leaves, Andrew tells Millie that everything will be alright. There are good days and bad days. She shouldn't worry about it. He'll take care of everything. A little while later, Millie comes out into the garden with the broken dishes when Enzo confronts her and asks what on earth she's doing in that house. For a moment, it seems he wants to tell her something important, but he notices Nina watching him from the window and decides to leave. That same day, Millie is cleaning the main bathroom when she finds a pill in the toilet. It has a particular shape that catches her attention, so she keeps it for the time being. A few minutes later, Nina appears ominously behind her and rudely tells her to get lost. She needs to take a bath and she should already be preparing dinner. Although Millie tries to explain that she was just cleaning, Nina's look is terrifying, so she hides the pill in her pocket and leaves with her head down. Millie goes down to the kitchen and Andrew offers to help her cook, as she hasn't yet settled in and didn't put things in the right drawers after that morning's unpleasant scene. When the food is ready, Cece is the first to sit down. The little girl is a glutton, but she is also extremely rude. She forces Millie to wash her glass a couple of times before she can use it. In addition, she repeats strange phrases all the time, phrases that Millie has only heard on horror shows. So they haven't become friends yet, and Millie doesn't like her. By the time the young woman returns with the third freshly washed glass, Andrew is already serving the food, but Nina is not with them. Millie silently retreats to her room, and there begins to stalk her boss's Instagram profile. There's no doubt Andrew is a great catch. He's kind, muscular, and a model father. He has no idea why he puts up with someone like Nina. It's clear she's not in her right mind. 2 seconds later, the door opens and Andrew appears. His boss has brought him something to eat. He gets very close and starts rubbing her face. The scene gets steamy very quickly, but a second later, Millie wakes up in her bed, grateful that it was all just a dream. That morning, after having a wet dream about her boss, Millie tries to keep her cool, but once again, Nina appears like a ghost behind her. Her gaze could easily be that of a serial killer, and her words don't match her attitude. She got her the key to her room as she asked. Now she won't feel trapped in the attic. Then she demands that she never again have dinner alone with her husband and leaves. After preparing lunch, Millie gets dressed to go out. It's Saturday, so she plans to get some fresh air, but Nina reveals that she lost that privilege when she threw away her speech notes. Millie tries to tell her that she has an important meeting, but her boss couldn't care less about her life. In fact, she behaves like a complete idiot. But Millie chooses to remain silent. At that moment, Andrew appears. He and Cece have plans at the park, so there is no need for Millie to stay, and Nina, so as not to contradict him, allows the young woman to take the day off. Next, we see Millie in an interview with her probation officer. It turns out the young woman is on probation and must attend these appointments regularly, or she could return to prison. As he leaves, he receives a call from Nina. In 5 seconds, she tells him to pick up Cece from ballet, but doesn't tell him where it is or when the class ends. Forcing the young woman to solve it on her own, fortunately, Millie arrives just in time, but Patrice, the mother of one of the girls, tells her that it's sleepover Saturday, and Cece is invited. Patrice calls Nina, and she makes Millie look like a crazy, forgetful, and incompetent person who mixed up the appointments, so the young woman goes home empty-handed. When she gets home, Nina acts as if nothing has happened, telling Millie that she'll soon be able to remember the schedules better, but she'll have to deduct the extra gas usage. Seated opposite her is Andrew's mother, who has brought a very expensive gift for the family, a China dinner service that has belonged to her family for generations. The old woman gives Millie explicit instructions on how to wash the dishes. After all, everyone in the family knows that Nina is bad with dishes, and they tend to break around her. In a conversation where every word feels like a stab, Millie is relieved when Andrew arrives to distract the ladies. That night, the stifling heat in her room forces her to go down to the kitchen, take something from the shelf, and watch television for a while. Andrew appears with a drink a few minutes later and sits next to her. Although the sexual tension is obvious, Millie tries hard not to do anything she'll regret. Millie asks him about Nina. She wants to know if she's upset with her. Andrew reveals that she'll get over it. He's realized it's a difficult situation. It all relates to a tragedy that happened to her when she was a child. Her parents died in a fire, and she was the only one who survived. Before he can reveal more, Nina appears, annoyed to see her husband with a nanny together on the sofa, and reminds him that it's time for bed. Andrew gets up and goes upstairs. A moment later, Nina says goodbye to Millie, tells her to take her things and leave immediately. But Millie begs for another chance, promises that she had no idea Andrew would show up, and swears that she has no intentions with her husband. Nina thinks about it for a second, then tells her she'll give her a week, but if something like this happens again, she'll be gone. Besides that, she wants her to dress more modestly since her breasts attract too much unwanted attention. A few days later, Nina's friends come over for tea, and Millie overhears their conversations. There, she discovers that Nina is not really pregnant, but she has no idea why she lied to her. But the most important revelation is that Nina spent 9 months in a psychiatric hospital for trying to drown Cece in a bathtub when she was younger. The only one who receives praise is Andrew. In everyone's eyes, he is a dream husband, the best father they have ever seen, and they have no idea how he has put up with Nina for so long. Once Nina returns, they're all friends again. Later that night, Millie writes in her diary about what she had to endure when Nina opened her door without permission and told her she shouldn't have listened to our friend's private conversations. For that reason alone, he has lost his day off once again, so he will have to look after Cece on Saturday while she attends a doctor's appointment with Andrew in the city. As soon as they leave, Millie checks the main bathroom. She wants to know what pills Nina is taking. She wants to find out if she's really crazy. Among the jars, he finds several containers of medicines used for mental disorders and schizophrenia, so he starts calling old friends to see if there are any jobs available. She plans to get out of that house as soon as possible, but for the moment she has to put up with Cece, who is a complete headache. The little girl entered her room and stole a troll doll that Millie has treasured for years, so they have an argument that ends up being interrupted by Nina. She enters the house crying and locks herself in the bathroom. That night, Andrew reveals to her that the doctor's results were not what they expected. Nina suffers from ovarian insufficiency, so having children is no longer possible. That makes him a little sad. He confesses that he loves Cece with all his heart, but she isn't his blood relative. He then warns her that the next few days might be difficult, but he'll be there to support her if she needs him. That morning, destruction is heard in the main room. Millie screams calling for Andrew, but when the door opens, she sees something very different. Nina appears holding a huge piece of glass in her hands. Blood runs down the glass as her gaze pierces Millie and makes her tremble. In that tense moment, Nina repeats word for word what her supposed friends said about her when she wasn't there, revealing that she was able to hear everything somehow. Next, Andrew appears, borrows the glass from his wife and gives her a towel to clean herself up. Then he closes the door in Millie's face. Once dawn breaks, Nina comes downstairs carrying a large pile of clothes. She wants to apologize to Millie and give them to her as a gift. Their dresses and jackets are very good quality, and now they are hers. She confesses that she was so sure that revealing her pregnancy would work that she didn't consider the possibility that her body wouldn't respond. Andrew wants a child so badly that she just wants to make him happy. After this, Nina asks him to get her tickets to a show in town. She plans to take Andrew and stay in a romantic suite for the whole weekend. That afternoon during ballet class, Millie meets Suzanne, who worked for Nina for 2 months, and warns her to be careful, telling her about the night in the bathtub. Nina threw Cece into the bathtub and then took a bunch of pills in an attempt to take her own life. If Andrew hadn't returned early from work, they would both be dead. When class ends, Millie returns home to give Nina what she asked for, 2 tickets to the show and the reservation at the luxury hotel. Upon hearing this, Nina bids farewell to Logic once again. She tells him that Saturday is her trip to art camp with Cece, so now those tickets will come out of her salary. However, the cost is equivalent to a month's salary, and that would completely ruin Millie. Andrew appears once again. When Nina isn't listening, he tells her that he'll take care of the cost. She shouldn't worry. Later, she helps Nina pack everything for her mother-daughter trip, and the girls say their goodbyes, leaving Andrew with Millie for the weekend. As soon as they leave, Andrew tells her that she deserves a break. He wants to give her the tickets so she can go with a friend or boyfriend if she has one, but Millie confesses that she doesn't have anyone to invite. As expected, they end up going to the show together, and Millie takes the opportunity to wear one of the dresses that Nina gave her. Upon seeing her, Andrew can't help but smile. The young woman is stunning, and they head off together to the show. The night is magical, the seats are top-notch, and they end up having a wonderful time, exchanging a few awkward glances during the presentation. Then over a couple of martinis and a 5-star dinner, the young woman cannot resist Andrew's charms. He confesses that he loves Nina, but things were very different before. He does everything to make her happy, but each attempt only seems to make things worse. At the end of the night, Andrew is too drunk to drive, so he books 2 rooms for them to spend the night at the hotel. Once it's installed, Millie turns on her phone and receives hundreds of notifications from Nina, calls, messages, and everything else that could possibly come her way, appearing one after another on the screen. Nervously, she knocks on Andrew's door. He promises her that everything will be alright, and then kisses her passionately. Between kisses and caresses, they spend the whole night together until dawn and return home as if nothing had happened. Upon arrival, they find the house immaculate. Nina appears shortly after with her face covered in bruises, and during lunch, she bluntly mentions that Millie was in prison for 10 years. Then she gives her a shopping list and sends her to the supermarket, and while she's running the errands, Millie reflects on what she'll do now that Nina knows how much she needs that job and has her in her hands. There she runs into one of Nina's hypocritical friends, who compliments her on her phone. It's the same one she gives to her children to monitor them. Thanks to an app that Nina recommended, she can see and hear everything. As she leaves the market, the police arrest her. It turns out someone reported the car stolen, and Millie ends up in the back seat of a patrol car. Andrew appears shortly after, gets her out of that predicament, and, upon returning home, forces his wife to apologize for what she did, but that will not happen. Nina has other plans. She has already reported her missing clothes to the police, she has the hotel recordings, and she is sure that her parole will be revoked when she is arrested for stealing from her bosses. Andrew gets fed up with all this, yells at his wife that enough is enough, and throws her out of the house. Before leaving, Nina slaps Millie. The following days are filled with lots of nude content. Millie goes from being the maid to sharing the master bedroom with Andrew, and now cooks for just the 2 of them. One morning, he decides to use the china to bring her breakfast, but Enzo he gives her the fright of her life when he stares at her like a pervert from the garden. The expensive plate plate breaks into pieces, and Andrew is so furious about what happened that he goes out to fire Enzo immediately. Andrew is as kind as ever, but he tells her in an authoritarian tone to pick up every piece. He knows someone who can fix it. That afternoon, Andrew returns and sees the pieces of crockery in a bag, but is annoyed to realize that Millie didn't wash them before putting them away. So he takes her up to the attic. They spend some time together there, but when Millie wakes up, the whole attic is empty. All the furniture has disappeared, and the door is locked. On the other side of the door, Andrew tells her he's sorry, but she deserves to be punished. At that moment, we return to Nina just as she leaves the house. After driving a few blocks, she stops to celebrate, shouting at the top of her lungs with euphoric joy. Then we see her celebrating in a hotel room, drinking champagne and fully enjoying her freedom, burning photos of Andrew with a smile. As she drinks, we see a scene about her past, starting with the death of her parents. After the tragedy, she lived in orphanages until she went to college and fell in love with a law professor. Their romance was brief, but it left a seed. However, he refused to take responsibility, and Nina ended up as a single mother in a job she hated. One afternoon during a meeting, her breasts became lactating and the investors mocked her, all except Andrew, who charmed her. Their life was perfect for the first few months, until one night he asked her to fix her hair roots and she ignored him. That was the first day they locked her in the attic. Andrew told her she had to be better, that her hair was an embarrassment and she had to learn her lesson. To win back her freedom, Nina had to pluck out 100 strands of her hair intact and put them in an envelope. At first, he thought it was a joke, but after 2 days without food and little water, he had no choice but to obey. It took her 3 tries to get 100 perfect strands into the envelope. As she left, Nina ran towards Cece, but Andrew put something in her water and she fainted before she reached her. When she woke up, Cece was in the bathtub with the water running. Before Nina could get her out, the police arrested her, and Andrew appeared as the concerned and perfect father. In the public eye, Andrew was a hero, and she ended up locked up for 9 months in a mental hospital. Upon her release, Cece loved Andrew more than her, and from then on, she was a prisoner of his rules, having forced intimacy with him and obeying everything he told her. Luckily, one afternoon, she was able to escape, had a contraceptive implant installed, and bribed the doctor to say that she was infertile. For years, she was trapped in that house, and when her outbursts got out of control, Andrew would send her back to the mental hospital. Enzo was the only one who knew about her situation, and he was determined to help her. Her sister died because of a man like Andrew, and Nina tells him her plan. Running away wouldn't help. Andrew will chase her to the ends of the earth, but if he leaves her, that might work. She just needed to find a younger, sexier version that looked enough like her. Her purpose was never to find a nanny. She was looking for her replacement, a replacement who is now in the same situation as her. Andrew goes up to the attic and explains that she must do something to regain her freedom. Since the plate broke into 21 pieces, she must cut herself the same number of times using one piece of it. Andrew then hands her a piece of the broken plate and tells her to make deep cuts, or she'll have to do it again. That night, Millie dreams about the last time she hurt someone with something ceramic. 10 years ago, a high school classmate abused one of her friends. She discovered them and hit him over the head with a vase until he was dead. Her friend refused to testify, and the boy's rich father paid a lot of money to have her imprisoned. That morning, Millie found a pastry knife hidden behind the door, so she hatched a plan, but first she had to obey Andrew. Using the piece of pottery, he cut himself 21 times in the stomach and waited until the next morning when Andrew returned to check on him. When the moment was right, he attacked him with the knife right in the neck. That gave him the seconds he needed to escape and close the door behind him, leaving Andrew locked inside. The reinforced door gives Millie the time she needs to go downstairs and eat a sandwich while she thinks about what she'll do next. Although the easy thing would be to run away, he decides to do something different. He takes a pair of pliers and passes it under the door. He wants one of his teeth or he'll leave it there. For every minute Andrew takes, she will destroy one piece of her mother's expensive china. To convince him that she is serious, she spreads gasoline on the floor and threatens to set everything on fire. So Andrew has no choice but to pull out a tooth at that moment. As night falls, Nina returns to the house to take Cece. Before entering, she notices the attic light is on, so she runs upstairs to rescue Millie. Ignoring that Millie is in the TV room, Nina accidentally releases Andrew, who then attacks her and throws her down the stairs. Andrew lunges at Millie, tries to suffocate her, but she bites him and then runs away. Immediately afterwards, Andrew returns to Nina and tells her it's good to have her back. He suggests they start over as if nothing had happened, but he is unaware that the girls have set a trap for him. Millie appears from behind and pushes him over the railing. Andrew falls 3 stories and dies. Nina tells him to leave. He doesn't deserve to carry the blame for this. An hour later, the police are at the house. Nina tells them that Andrew fell by accident, but that doesn't explain his neck wound or his missing tooth. The officer stares intently at Nina and confesses that her sister Kathy was Andrew's girlfriend in high school. From that day on, she changed and had to disappear. So he will categorize this event as a strange but unfortunate accident, and Nina will have nothing to worry about. With a tear running down her cheek, Nina shows her how grateful she is. The police officer understands her pain and leaves. During the funeral, some cry, but the officer is happy that someone like Andrew finally got what he deserved. Millie appears shortly after. Nina approaches her and gives her a check for $100,000 so she can start a new life. The film ends with Millie in another interview for a maid. Lorena, her future boss, tells her that Nina recommended her, as she knows how to deal with demanding husbands. On Lorena's hand, Millie can see bruises, and she looks tired and caresses the knives in front of her as if she were thinking of using them, but not for cooking. Millie fully understands what Lorena is trying to tell her and accepts the job, closing the film with a moment of complicity between them.